life, you know, I feel like it's better just to be myself and just see what comes out, right? I had a wonderful Christmas. I really did. And I hope you did too. There's nothing that's more important to me than, being around my children and, and having, wonderful experiences with them, and my grandchildren. they're they're hilarious. And so the things that I value might not be the same things that you value, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I always, I really always do focus on what's actually important in life. And I don't worry that much, about the other things. I know that God has my back, the real God. He has my back. And he knows who I am. And he knows that I don't come with malice. I might have feelings of, of of emotional and spiritual harm that came at me that I think needs to be rectified. But I'm not a malicious person or even a vengeful person, but I do see things as they are, and I recognize when things must be dealt with. That's the difference, right? And I don't want to, and I'm not a catty person. I just, it's just so, I don't know. I don't understand people that do that waste so much time on hurting and attacking others. Do you realize you have just for the sake that you're alive and you have a body and a mind and a spirit, you have already everything that matters. And it's right. Who's saying the only thing you can do, the only thing you can really do really well is be yourself. And it doesn't matter how educated you are. The minute that you start acting like you're somebody else, everything goes south. You have to come clean. You have to be yourself all the time. I've gone through some really treacherous experiences in my life, and I don't want to focus on that, but I know what it feels like to go through cancer treatments, like the really extensive cancer treatments. I know what it feels like to be in ICU with COVID and having no one other than, your sons say anything to you or care, about you being in ICU with COVID, or being on vacation and not worried about it, right? Or, I know what it's like only a year later to have fallen, on broken tile where I was living and crushing my shoulder. I shattered it and had to have reverse shoulder replacement. And still, even when you look at these HIPAA records and you know exactly what I went through, there's people that knew the hell I'd been through and they didn't care. They still came back to want to destroy me. They had absolutely zero compassion at all. No compassion to understand the gravity of what I actually physically went through health-wise. And they want to paint me like I was just this loser. But what they don't realize is that, well, they realized, they just didn't care, that I had gone through life-threatening events and injury, so that were already devastating, but to go through those things and have people that should have cared about you still want to destroy you for money. Well, it's hard to pretend, that it was anything other than what it is, and I am a forgiving soul, but I have to be honest. I feel like, if it was you, I don't think you would feel any differently. It just seems like monstrous that anybody would behave in such a way, not with compassion, but real poison in their whole spirit, that they would, and that they didn't have any level of compassion, knowing for a fact everything that I have faced in my entire life. But boy, those things that I went through from 2000, especially, during my marriage. Oh, and by the way, I haven't even seen my ex-husband since divorce court in 2012. I haven't even seen him. Okay, they did all of this behind my back, and even here on YouTube, I can't see everything that's going on because they decided they were going to put on this test to see who was, the most intuitive or who had the psychic gifts, right? And and I'm one of the strongest ones. Okay, I knew I had that gift, but that's not what I'm all about. I'm a singer, and I came on here and I asked for the community to help me because I went to the police because I already knew that they were in on it from a couple of years ago, okay? And I can go back over that again, but I really don't want to revisit the past. You can watch my videos. But but they literally did in my hometown. It wasn't a psyop. It was for real, okay? And everything I have told you and all the evidence I had to give these tarot readers, I gave them evidence where to look because when they said what they said, it was very unclear, but I recognized exactly who, what, where, why, and how. I just knew it. I knew exactly who and why because I read people's energy. I know who they are. And well, if you're around this person, you kind of know what they're about. But even the ones I'm not around, I can kind of pick up on them too. But still, the truth is that I knew without a shadow of a doubt who was doing the attack. I really did, and things might have changed. And maybe there's somebody out there that died that I didn't know about. But all of this has been constructed to hide who my real parents are, to hide, a gift from my ancestors, from my grandparents, and people that gifted me. And the thing about that is when someone creates a will before they die and they really think about it, it's their last will and testament. It's the wishes of their heart. And for government and people to come in and swoop in, or anyone, even strangers, to swoop in and steal not the inheritance, it doesn't just disrespect the person that it was gifted to. It is incredibly disrespectful for the person that lived their life. Just because somebody's died doesn't erase the fact that they lived and that they were a person and they created, and they leave legacies and, their lives mattered. And when they make these wills and testaments, it's, they have a reason. They had a reason for it. And so, and how would you feel if you had created a will before your death for one of your kids or for someone that you loved or that you appreciated or somebody that you just really wanted to help? And nobody respected that. They totally disrespected you. Oh, well, she's dead. It doesn't matter. We're just going to do what we want to do. Can it's, and this is what I described to somebody. Justice in the law, it's not vengeance. Justice to me and to you really is the epitome of respect. It's respect for the law. It's respect for an individual. It's respect for who you are and whatever that was that somebody saw in you that made them feel love for you, that they wanted to leave you a gift in the first place or recognized a talent in you that they wanted to appreciate. But the thing is that justice is something that you should love. You should, the only time that these people fear it is because they're doing something to where justice won't be on their side. That's the problem, okay? We've all faced that, right? Where justice, nobody's perfect, but these crimes, boy, they went over the top big time, And I'm not here to simply shame and to say I'm unforgiving. It isn't that. But I do want to give truth and justice a better reputation because what if it happened to you? Nobody minds justice when they're in the right, on their side of the right, But when you're on the side of the false, it's different, okay? Truth and justice suddenly are your enemy and you're just running, But if but it's interesting to me when it comes to crime or when you're on the background and you're watching things happen and you see what's going on and you don't want to get involved. However, if it happened to you, you would want somebody to step in and say, something's going on here. This is really weird. Why are they chasing that person? And then you listen, you find out why. Oh my gosh, this person's innocent. She doesn't even really know what's going on. And the thing is that, they have me shadow banned so that I can't see everything. Okay, you don't get all of my messages. I can't communicate with you all the time because they are blocking me to not be able to, if they like what I'm saying, that will get exposed. But if they don't like what I'm saying, then you can't find me. Because I notice that. So if I sing a song, I get lots of views, right? But if I talk truth, then maybe I'll get 25 views, right? But the thing is that, I can't come to you and tell you what's really happening because I'm being hidden. I do have spiritual gifts. I know that I do. But really, when you ask me, who are you, Treva? I'm a singer. I'm an entertainer. I want to be happy. I like laughing. That's what I'm about. And yes, I have those gifts. And you could too. It's a matter of being being in alignment, wanting to have the truth, wanting to have the ancestors help you. And sure, you can go to the dark side like you can with any profession. You can use literally any profession for the dark or the light. So they say that this is like a spiritual war, right? And it is. It definitely is a spiritual war. But spiritualism, believing in having a third eye or being psychic, you can still believe in God. In my mind, and I said this eons ago when I was first describing it, I never considered believing in Jesus Christ separate from being a spiritualist. When I was younger, they did, tell me that every single one of us has the light of Christ inside of our hearts. I believe that we all have a God. We all have God's source inside of ourselves. We all do. And it's up to us to decide how we want to use it. And I can promise you this, people that want to pretend to be you or pretend that, or to twist the truth and to kind of maneuver things to go in their favor, these people, they're not in alignment with, especially if they're people that are in the judicial system, like whether they're attorney or, a judge or, if they're trying to create a narrative and well, let's pretend it wasn't about me. If I knew that was happening, I'd still be mad because I'd realize, oh my gosh, what's happening? If they're going out after a group of people and they're throwing them under the bus and it's not true, I don't care if it's not me. I would still care. And you should too. Because we owe it to ourselves to really be watching what goes on around us for our own safety. One person thrown under the bus that's innocent, even if they're not innocent, we all have due process in a court of law. Even the guilty have due process in a court of law. You can't, they definitely thought that they could toy with that. And they want to save face. They didn't care about my face. They wanted you to think so many horrific, nasty things about me. But now they only care about their face because they don't want to be shown for what they actually are. They lied to you about me. I'm not anything what they said that I was. Nothing at all. Not even close. And they knew that. If they hadn't known that, they wouldn't have had to keep me from getting court papers. They wouldn't have done this whole court case behind my back without me there because they knew that if I had been there and given my testimony, I would have shut it down like that because they were lying, okay? And this is the kind of information they don't want you to have. But I promise you, if something like this could happen to me, you better believe it could happen to you. And you owe it to yourself, and we owe it to this community, to everyone, that we need to keep our eyes open for each other. Because, this happened to me, but it could happen to you too. And if you were somebody that saw me and you realized that I was being, attacked by people that you were lying, then you could tell I'm not a liar. I tell the truth. And people know where I am. And I hated this surveillance thing. Really was cruel to watch me, having people that were nasty and watching me, sexualizing me. in such a way that kind of that grossed me out, that's really hard to scrape off your brain. Once you know it, that's really tough to forget. Okay. And it wasn't just the FBI. I mean, if the police are trying to help me, that's one thing. But other people that aren't even a part of the FBI were watching me. And our right to privacy is a constitutional right that we have. It's one of our human civil rights. They don't have a right to watch us, especially not somebody with no criminal background. And if they felt like they had a reason to, that, and maybe they believed the lies enough to where they believed that they had a reason to, no, they realized that this person's not doing anything. Now what are we going to do? We've already done this shit back here. Now what are we going to do to fix it? And, there's lots of lessons involved, and the people that have the courage, to speak up and say what they know, it's going to work. It'll be better for us, to be honest. Because, if somebody that we respect tells us a big fat lie, any of us could be subjected to believing somebody that we counted on, right? We counted on them. We trusted their image. We thought that they would be honest, right? That we could follow along. So I can understand how people could be confused and they would not see things correctly. But even still, if you're going to be going to commit crime, you might, then that's something you have to ask yourself. Am I willing to do something against a person that I know could get me in trouble? Is that worth it to me? Okay, maybe in your mind you think, okay, well, we're not going to get caught, but what if you do? See, I always think about that because you know why? I always think about these things when I make my decisions because like I've said before, there's two things that are so important, more important than anything else. First, it's your good name, your reputation. That's why I'm fighting for my good name. Okay? No, that doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I have a good name and I'm not a criminal and I didn't do anything to deserve the attack. And the second most important thing you want to remember is your freedom. Maybe even your own money. Because even if you haven't committed something that would land you in prison, you might do something or slander somebody that could cost you all of your money and everything that you have. And these are things that you have to consider because, we, just because we're online, we're still very much real. We're right here, we're real. And so what I'm telling you things that actually will protect you. That, and I'm not even telling you in a religious way or throwing the Bible at you to tell you how to act. That you need to be Christ-like and you need to be a Christian or forcing the Bible on you. I'm telling you the things that matter to you in your life are your family. Well, first your good name, your family, your reputation, your resources, the reasons why you have so many reasons why being honest and having integrity is the best course of action in your life. It is. It protects you. All right. Bearing false witness is one of the 10 commandments. If you are bearing false witness against someone, which would be perjury in a court of law, you are in harm's way. And some people, and I've said this before, if you get so high and mighty in any of your fields where you think that because of who I am, I can just kind of get away with this. That's a problem. You know why? Because the minute somebody has that kind of power to infringe upon us and think because of who they are, they can do whatever they want, we're in danger. I've said this so many times. And I know that some of you haven't been able to see me because of being shadow banned. But I am telling you, you want more people like me. I promise you. Because if you are someone that goes along with crooks like this, with people that are willing to twist the truth in a court of law, you're in danger. Or they're twisting religion. Or they want to set you up to look like you're this evil sinner and that you're doing all these things. They said that I had HIV and I was spreading it around. That was a lie. And I knew that like 2.5, 3 years ago. And I kept telling people the truth over and over again. But nobody would listen because they'd already spread these tremendous lies. And they knew that they were going to have pie on their face because they spread these horrific lies. about me and my character and the person that I actually am, because they were jealous because I was going to get money and an opportunity that they weren't going to get. And they wanted to steal that. And the fact that, I learned that no one that was really a sibling or a family member could do that, could just, maybe some could, but most of the time, no. Usually family, they fairly much stick together. Maybe not perfectly, but they don't do something like this. I knew that there had to be some difference about me. That's what helped me figure out that I don't belong to this actual family. At least not straightforward. I mean, maybe I do, a few parents, removed, but the thing is that, oh, I knew that I had to. And because of the way that I was raised and the way that I was treated as I was raised, I did feel like I was that redhead stepchild. I knew that there was a difference, not just in my immediate family, but cousins, aunts, uncles. I knew. Okay. I knew, especially after George died, I knew there was a difference. There was a difference. I could feel it. And I don't care what faith it is. If a faith is going to use religion to come after me, you know, it doesn't really affect, well, I mean, in my case, it affects the religion because these people have, so there's millions of members, and so, they can't afford to do crap like this. They couldn't afford it, but they did it anyway. Because, it's more for them, it was more important to protect their reputation than to speak the truth. And we know that's true because of all the children within the church, this LDS church that was, molested. And there's a huge court case going on about that. Which is also another thing that I was victimized by. But to be trafficked by religion so that they could steal, and not just the LDS either. I was trafficked by religious people, Catholic, just Protestant, you name it, I was, because they wanted to take the money. It was, and believe me, you say it was a test for me, but I think it's more of a test for you guys, because if you are faithful and you believe in the things that you're saying when you preach, there should be, no, you can't come back and say that there's an excuse for behaving in illegal, fraudulent ways, committing federal crimes, and saying that you have faith in Jesus Christ. You just can't do it. You can't. Okay? You blew it. Now, and so, and I know in my particular faith, and, and even if you look at church history, they would do anything to protect what they were doing, protect their faith and their belief. And if you stood in their way, that's it, right? But that's also that's not just a Freemason idea. That's also like 33rd degrees. If you betray us, you're gone, right? But the thing is that it doesn't matter to you until it happens to you. And this is what I'm asking you to consider. You don't care that it happened to me because you were just after the money, it wasn't happening to you personally, so it didn't matter. But if you were targeted the way that I was, oh my gosh, what would you do? Would you have courage like me and just like fight like hell and say, how dare you? To hell with you, that's Vidanya. Move along. You would fight. You wouldn't, hopefully you would, that you would have a spirit to fight for yourself and your family and your reputation. Even if you were going to die, you don't want to leave a legacy like that. No, you've still got children, and they didn't care. They wanted to take what belonged to me and forgot, and weren't even considering my own children that are still very much alive. And, trust me when I tell you, just because it did not happen to you personally, it doesn't matter, because just the fact that it could happen to any one of us, it could happen to you. And we owe it to ourselves to demand our judicial system to do their freaking jobs, no matter what. Yes, with integrity. We need to hold their feet to the fire. These positions that they hold pay very, very well. And they've got lots of benefits. And they seem to think that they don't have to follow along with the law. But I assure you they do. In this state of Utah, and in Washington, D.C. The law is there to protect us. And sometimes the laws are skewed, right? You know, people get some whack-a-mole ideas and then they go to, Congress, right, or they go write up these bills and go to the Senate floor and fight over them, right? And some of them are nuts, right? but and so that's why, another reason why we need to be on our toes and making sure these lawmakers really are representing the people, because that's the whole point of government, is to represent the people. So that we have laws that make sense, first of all, and that protect us, not government. They need to protect us. And that Constitution of the United States of America, that is put in place to protect us. But you should also be aware, as you might have figured out, is that Constitution and Bill of Rights can be abused too. They can twist it and churn it and make it mean something that it wasn't intended to mean. And it takes, and it takes us really, being on our toes and being willing to fight for ourselves and making sure that we are getting the representation in front of a fair judge in a fair court of law. No one, no psychologist, medical doctor, no. They pulled out all the stops. But I wasn't allowed to be there because they knew that if you saw me and you listened to me, that you'd know that I'm perfectly sane and that everything I went through and that I'm telling you is on record. It's the truth. And whatever they took from HIPAA and changed about me was a lie so they could steal and erase me, the person that I am. And the veil is thin. Marcella really did tell me. She's passed away. She did. She told me, get up, pay attention. People are attacking you. The veil has always been thin, but it's never been so thin as when you get a terminal illness like cancer. Our family that has died, they're not as far away as you think. They might be on a different frequency, but they can communicate if we're willing to listen. And I'm not suggesting praying to them or anything like that. They're not gods. They're just like us, but they've died, okay? I believe in God. I look at this world and I look at the sunrise and the ocean and just, how could there not be a God? I know there is. And I live my life in a way where, of course, I made mistakes along the way, but I grew up. And I try to make sound decisions as best I can. But because I haven't been able to see everything that's going on, I wouldn't know one minute to the next if I was doing it right, doing it wrong, protecting the wrong person, helping the right person, I didn't really know. So all I could do is just follow the dictates of my heart. If I felt like somebody, that through CCTV and invading my privacy, throwing me under the bus, wanted to come back in my life and be friends after really a vicious attack, I don't know. I don't feel very good about that. No, I don't feel good about that. I can't, let's say you were like, here's the originators. And like I told you, okay, so the gossip, it starts here, and then it goes through this grapevine process where it just gets worse and worse and worse as it goes along. And so if somebody that was down the line a few times were committing crimes, well, you're going to have to face that. But if you didn't really, if you were like realizing, what the hell's going on here? This is wrong. And you stopped yourself and you thought, oh my gosh, this is an innocent person. And you came forward and you tried to correct it. That says volumes about the person you actually are. That you're listening to your conscience, that you still have a conscience and a heart and compassion. And so because of that, you have so much potential because we don't want to harm each other. We really don't. I believe, I'm a firm believer that crime is because we're harming people, because people get harmed that didn't deserve it, and then they get upset, and then they want to fight. It takes a lot of strength not to fight and to not retaliate. It really does. You know, but at some point, I have to ask myself, damn it, I'm worth fighting for, and I'm not putting up with this shit. I'm not putting up with it. Okay? I'm not. And I'm grateful to the heroes that realized the crime, that wanted to come forward and be of service. But we have agencies in our country, at least, Homeland Security, FBI, people that are supposed to be protecting people, especially innocent people that are being victimized and cyberbullied. They're not supposed to go along with it. They're supposed to help us, right? And if I don't belong to this family, and I'm here, and I was saying, I don't know if I belong to this family. I need help here. Not only did they not come to my rescue, they made it worse. They pounded on me because I'd already committed so many crimes against me, and they knew it. Now, I understand that if you've got a boss telling you what to do, and that you might not have a choice, or if you feel like you're alone and your partners are over there, doing whatever they want to do, and they're not doing the right things, there's things that make me, I have an ability to, understand and to be, try to put myself in someone's place. That's called empathy. The ability to put yourself in somebody else's place. And I understand too that it would take an immense amount of courage to tell the truth after you'd already really kind of, screwed up. But that means something. That courage to do that, to speak up, to risk, and to have that courage to speak up, to save someone that you know is innocent, that didn't deserve it, that's meaningful. That's powerful. Because that means that you are penitent. It means you actually give a damn. And those are my people that give a damn. All of us can be tricked and fooled. But my advice, if I was to give you any advice at all, without ever knowing you, would be do not forsake yourself, your family, your freedom, to steal, to go along with a plot, to destroy another person's life. It will come back, one way or the other. It will. Have integrity. Not even because Jesus told you to, but because you know that if it happened to you, that the truth is the only thing that really will set you free. The things that Jesus taught, well, it isn't just, religion, okay? And yes, I realize that they use a lot of these, scriptures and things to create our laws because they're trying to, because we're supposed to be domesticated, right? And it does domesticate us. And being prayerful will give you the Spirit of God. It does. And I'm not downplaying that. But if you don't have faith and you need a reason, your freedom is a reason. Your reputation is a reason. Your ability to keep your job and to not lose your license is a reason. You do not want to lose your license. And if you've already crossed the line, it's not my fault. I'm just saying, if you don't have faith in God, and you don't, if you don't pray or have a sense of what's right and what's wrong, and you just do whatever because you think you're a hotshot or you think you can get away with it, I assure you, you can't. Sooner or later, it just catches up, and even, okay, let's say it didn't catch up, and you died without having this repentance thing, you didn't clear your conscience of your wrongdoings, and we all have them, and we do our best, to grow. And as we grow up, we're supposed to mature and start driving that, our lives by ourselves. And even when we've been betrayed in our youth, we still have to, drive our own lives. We have to make that decision of who we're going to be. And even when our upbringing was completely and totally unfair and that we were lied to, we still owe it to ourselves, to be honest and to have that integrity, because it might save your life and your freedom, the lives of your kids. Don't waste your life by lacking integrity. Because sooner or later, things just come right back around. They do, like a boomerang. Comes right back. I do wish you a safe New Year's. Be safe. Make decisions that keep you safe and that keep the people that are around you safe. Protect your kids. You know, there's so much more. I mean, money is wonderful. You know, I've always been, I've always, financially struggled. I don't feel like, that was fair, then to find out that I was not supposed to struggle, that I really did have money. My family was just stealing it from me. They were stealing. They wanted to keep me beaten, downtrodden. They didn't want me to be successful. And the more successful I became on the app with my music and everything, they were scared that people would find out that I was still alive and what they had actually done. And that I'm a living beneficiary that they were trying to tell you all had died. I'm still alive. And you know I am. Good luck. I hope you all find your way. I do. I really do. Life's too short to be wasting your time trying to pretend to be someone you are not and to steal what belongs to somebody else. Freedom is the most important thing that we have. We don't want to lose that. We don't. I wish you the best. I really do. Thanks for listening. Thanks for stopping by. Have a good evening.